Hi everyone, I'm Nicole Veggiotti, European Affairs Project Owner in IHE Catalyst, and I'm very happy to present you this webinar titled Introducing the Plugathon for openEHR, an educational journey to test and connect health data across Europe. Just few practicalities about this webinar, so please keep your microphone muted. If you have questions during the session, please use the chat box and we will address the question in the second part of the webinar. Slides will be available on IHE Connectathon webpage, and after the webinar, you will find the recording in IHE-Europe YouTube channel. This is the agenda for today. We will have a presentation of the case of an IHE Plugathon with openEHR by Lapo Bertini. He is the director at Dedalus Italia and board member at IHE Catalyst. Then we will have an introduction to openEHR by Rachel Dunscombe, and she's CEO at openEHR. And then we will have a presentation of the Plugathon openEHR track agenda by both Rachel and Lapo, and then the question and answer session. So, Lapo, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. So welcome everyone. So I had already the introduction from Nicole, so I don't need to present myself. So what's the case here? The case here is this. So there is a need of convergence in the industry around the different standards that are being used in different settings in different ways, both across Europe and worldwide. And mostly IHE has been always a standard neutral organization. So we are really looking at any possible standards that can reach workflows for our users. And the vendors are looking at IHE in this case for guidance on how we can implement correctly certain base standards in creating more complex workflows. And if you look at the standards scenario and you look at the standard scenario from a building block perspective, that is not really addressing all the issues that we face when we go to user sites or to address use cases that users have. Those are more related to workflows, and the workflow is a complex beast and needs to be, orchestrating different elements. So Rachel and I came together and started thinking, how can we bridge this? How can we look at the openEHR? IHE is already working with a lot of other standards, okay, H7 in the main, but DICOM, W3C, and SNOMED, and others. So how can we look at this? Now, it's not easy to start with this kind of thing. So what we look at the Plugathon as a tool for really bringing the two communities together and starting thinking, hey, what we can use, that is good from both, and maybe methodology from one, artifacts from others, and mechanisms that are there, and build something that is valuable for the industry and for as a whole. So that's where the Plugathon, the IHE Plugathon with openEHR really started from. So the hope here is to really get into that room in June in Vienna, and get the, besides educating the audience, also getting a lot of feedback from the audience on directions or needs that we may be overlooking but are very valuable for our industry. So that's where this all coming from. And with that, I'm going to leave you, Rachel, the floor to you so that you can give the openEHR perspective to this.
Thank you so much, Lapo. And Nicole, I'm just going to share my screen if that's okay.
Of course. I
from you.
interrupt my presentation. Okay. The floor is yours, Rachel.
Thank you. So as Lapo says, this has been probably 12, 18 months in the making from our original conversation, where we talked about it, but I'm going to come back to basics. What is openEHR? Because some of you I know on this call will know openEHR incredibly well, but for other people, it is still something new. And I'm a former CIO, and it's something that I've used in practice, and it's something that has been very important to me. So I'll explain a little bit about this. And we just, when we have to do the 5-minute elevator pitch, we talk about Lego. openEHR is really like Lego and building a city in terms of healthcare data. Now, obviously, some of the standards we've talked about are interoperability standards, but really openEHR is a standard for storing data in human healthcare. And you have to think about building the Lego city. We have this lovely analogy that Heather, our CMIO, has put together, our Chief Medical Information Officer. And when you think about a Lego city, it's made up of individual blocks. It's then made up of sort of, things that you make of it, buildings or helicopters or whatever. And then you put multiple models together to make a city. And within our world, the reference model describes the blocks. It's a bit like saying what the individual units are and how they should be specified. And we have sets of clinicians and technologists, but it's clinically led, globally defining what that healthcare data is that needs to be specified at the unit level. We have archetypes, they're the individual units. So think about something like blood pressure. That's an archetype. That's always a good one to think about. And they are the little patterns. And we think of those as the sort of Lego blocks. Then you have the templates, which take multiple Lego blocks together to create a use case. So think of things like clinical messaging or forms. And then through building up from the very bottom to the top, you get an entire unified health record, whatever application you want to build in healthcare. But the beautiful thing about this is the data is engineered to be non-duplicative. So when I said blood pressure earlier, which is one of the archetypes, it's only ever stored once in one way. And that is then used by multiple templates, which means for things like trending, for individual care records, there's only ever one concept for each thing in healthcare, which is really important for today and especially for the future when we have things like AI and intelligence, which will need to trend things across time. So as I said, the archetype of blood pressure is our simplest example that I could think of. So we've got that here. It's basically the building block, computable specification for a single concept of blood pressure or a medication order or a symptom or a diagnosis, so on. It's inclusive of everything that is needed, that is defined by the sort of clinical senate of people to actually describe what human healthcare needs. It's universal and it's designed once for maximal reuse, which means that our data is engineered optimally for human healthcare. A template is a data set, so it's multiple archetypes. It's computable for a specific purpose. So if you think about an ultrasound report or a discharge summary, it is something that is used, physically, as Lapo said, within the health enterprise. We've got flexible, so it can be used by doctors, nurses, by patients with their PROMs or their self-reporting. And there's one or more archetypes per template. And the governance is less critical, so you can create more localized or national versions of templates. The archetypes are the really critical piece where globally we have to have one source of truth. Now, how is openEHR supported? This slide is a little out of date. Because it says here that we've got 3,350 users on our clinical knowledge manager. We actually have 4,000 as of yesterday, which is a huge milestone for us. So they are people contributing to the governance of openEHR in terms of these models. We also have industry support. These are companies that are all using openEHR in their products or supporting openEHR in one way or another. And we also have affiliates, a little bit like HL7 within countries. That's a growing number. Again, in the last week or so, we've had a couple of new affiliates, one including openEHR US. So the US is also embracing this. So now onto the work that we are looking to do with IHE. So we, over the past year or two, have made a lot of progress. We're members of the Joint Initiative Council, we're liaisons to CENT 251, We're liaisons to ISO 215. We have got a partnership agreement with SNOMED. We're doing significant work with HL7 on openEHR and FHIR. And we're recognized as a trademark in the US as well now. In talking to the wider standards bodies and working with them further, it's incredibly important for us to ensure that health systems are able to, first of all, deploy our standard more easily, especially in the wider standards landscape. And secondly, that we are able to test how standards are being deployed. We've had some really fantastic discussions. It's obviously, as Lapo said, quite an open agenda in terms of getting feedback from our communities who we would really like in Vienna with us. But we will definitely be looking at how we can leverage profiles both for openEHR and also openEHR coterminous with other standards. So FHIR, because, if we take things like the International Patient Summary, just looking at that profile, there's guidance there for CDA, there's guidance there for FHIR, but we already do International Patient Summary. There needs to be, sort of formalization of how that should be deployed. We're also very interested in the wider testing landscape, not just testing in terms of, testing at plugathons. We're really interested in formalizing potentially a relationship with IHE for our testing of, our community in terms of verified deployers of openEHR who has a clinical data repository, who has various other tools and functionality that are put out to the market. And so we want quite an open debate about what are the priority items, what do our community want, and what will be most beneficial to healthcare. So that's hopefully a summary for those that didn't understand openEHR, but also an explanation of what we're exploring, and welcome any feedback. Hopefully you can join us in Vienna. If you can't, it would be great to take some feedback on what you think is important in the relationship going forward. Thanks so much, Nicole.
Thank you, Rachel. So I start sharing again my screen. Okay, so let's do it in presentation mode. Okay, now there is the part related to Plugathon openEHR track agenda. Just to let you know, Rachel and Lapo, I divided the agenda in 5 slides. Each slide is for one part of our agenda. So please stay in next slide when you want to go on with the discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I can start, Rachel. I think that, I think the agenda is really built on starting the journey together, and therefore starting with some, the Plugathon is a very, very unique concept, and the Plugathon is not about testing and validating conformity of specification, because that is done somewhere else, like the Connectathon. This is actually a combination of education and getting together, working on problems, trying to figure out what is the trajectory for the organization that are holding a Plugathon track. And at the end of the Plugathon track, you'll find a group of actions that you can take home and work on for hopefully for the next iteration or for the Connectathon moving forward. So this first part, the welcome, so to speak, is where we set the basic tone of the meeting, and give a comprehensive basis of information about the concept that are holding openEHR and IHE. So that is where really this is coming from. So let's move to the next slide. Maybe fantastic. Rachel, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So there was just something actually on the last slide which does play into this. So we have a large delegation of people from the HL7 and the openEHR community who are meeting 2nd and 3rd of June to create our sort of forward path in terms of collaboration. And I think it's worth saying that these intersections of the standards do play a lot into how we move forward. So that is something that I'm going to be playing into this day as well, what our collaborations are and what they mean. Now, understanding the interplay, openEHR and IHE profiles. For me, I think it's really important actually for especially the openEHR community to understand more about IHE profiles. Some people are very up to speed. Certainly my experience in the UK in deploying IHE profiles, but not everybody has had chance. So this is really a chance for us to understand and reflect on that. And actually look at how we can move forward together and what the interplay is between the two of them. So there are IHE profiles to support secure openEHR based solutions. What is applicable? So I think we can do a bit more of a deep dive on that. And then we're going to look at the alignments as well. Looking at how we can best leverage these profiles once we've explored the profiles that we think are applicable, and what are the community's needs. So I think it's really good. It's starting at the beginning and saying these are all the assets we have between us. Where is the most beneficial area to actually start exploring, and then what are the sort of actions that we can take moving forward from that. So I'm pretty excited to get into that, and it's going to be really nice to be working with Daniel on the day around this. Next. Yeah. Shall I take this one as well, Lapo?
Yeah, this is IPS, so it's something that is your care about. So go ahead.
It is. It's something I'm very passionate about, the IPS.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So very obvious. Yeah, the IPS is very obviously on everybody's agenda. And as I said earlier, we have done the work. We have, openEHR data flowing into IPSs. For us, we would really like to explore how the IPS may be a use case where we can actually play through some of these, sort of next steps. So the IPS and its significance, it's something that's going to be touching definitely everybody in Europe, others in Australia and the US I know are working on it. So it's probably the biggest global use case we have on our agenda at the moment. We're going to look at how the clinical models, the archetypes and templates provide a robust foundation for creating the IPS. And then we're going to be looking at the joint solution that we could have for IPS. I don't doubt that, in further rounds of IPS testing for IHE, the openEHR will be sort of, there and present. So I think it's an excellent, choice for us to use for this. Next.
Yes, and before you go into the next one, if I can augment to what you said, it's also about, giving feedback to people that are working on these items that are sitting outside of the Plugathon and that are in the industry in general, that there is a consensus on certain things. Because otherwise, that's where we also need to, and I see a question from the chat, well, the question is, there are a lot of standards like openEHR, openFire. IHE is more a process-based standard using transactions from openEHR, openFire. Is in IHE we create profiles, correct? So which IHE profile will use openEHR standards? We don't know yet. We have ideas. Okay, that's the Plugathon scope. The Plugathon scope is to get together and trying to map out what is available of the two standards that can come together and augment the result and create a basis for adoption and more clear direction for the industry in adopting this, and look at the procurement side of things, for instance, at the end of the day. So which is the use case? So I think these are two communities here that know very well their own turf, that they know very little of the other turf. So we need to get together, and the Plugathon is all about this, meeting and trying to figure out, brainstorming and discussing things. And of course, we try to create an agenda that has some ideas that are tossed onto the floor. Maybe we get out of this meeting with a different outcome. But this is how we're going to start. Go ahead with the next slide, which is testing conformance. Now this is more on on both organizations' trajectory, but of course IHE has an established presence in testing for more than 25 years now. So now when we look at the profiles, we look at what artifacts openEHR can offer, what workflows may be interesting. The next logical step is, okay, if we get together and we create something that people can implement, vendors can implement in the products, then those vendors will ask for conformity testing, because that is the next logical step. That's what the industry used to, and that's what we also aim to. So we're going to discuss this, and we're going to set a discussion about what type of trajectory we can do. We're not discussing next year we're doing Connectathons or we're doing Connectathons in October. That's not the scope. The scope is to say what is that makes sense for both organizations if what we have said in the previous sessions is realized in some way or the other. What is the trajectory we want to go on? And we put a 15 minutes block at the end where we want to have an interactive discussion. What is conformity for the community in openEHR, and what can we learn from that? And how can we augment both organizations' outlook moving forward?
Absolutely.
Next one.
And I think the exciting thing on conformance is that we, ourselves are looking at further conformance testing within the openEHR family, and I think there could be a really good, set of initiatives that we could find around this, not just in terms of the Connectathons, but also, a partnership with IHE to assure our marketplace. So we're really excited to hear about people's views in that sort of 15-minute session.
And I guess this is the final session where we basically look at everything that we have said and we set the joint action moving forward.
Yes.
So the important element here, this is not just an exercise that you go in and you say, well, let's listen to that person that speaks about something, and then you go home and forget about it. This is actually meant to create an actionable path moving forward, whatever it is, small or big, but that is exactly what we need to get out. And this is why we ask your participation into the Plugathon. It's not just that it's communication per se. And also another element that is important, and I know this is important for you as well, Rachel, is understanding what type of jurisdictions in the world are more interested in something rather than other, or they want to be on the forefront of implementation. So that was also something that is interesting to understand. So the more diversity we will have in the room, the more we will get from this portion of the discussion. Rachel, over to you if you have additional.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say in our partnership with both HL7 and SNOMED, actually getting stakeholders in the room and getting the consensus around the future direction is a really important first step. And I think this is a really important first step in the relationship with IHE. Certainly from the openEHR side, we are an open community, and, our members are the people that need to make the decisions. And so it's fantastic to be able to do that in an open way. And thank you to the IHE team for allowing us to have this format for the event, because I feel it's very consultative and it allows the communities to, sort of examine what we can do in future and actually make some, as you said, action-based forward movement, which is important. We could have an event that was not action-based, but for me, it's really important that so what do we do next? And that's going to be a really important outcome, which, we want to be able to report back to our relative stakeholders.
Very well said. Nicole,
yeah,
over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Lapo, to participate to this webinar and for your very nice presentation. So now I stop sharing my screen, and I want to ask the audience if there is any questions for Rachel and Lapo. In the meantime, in the chat there is also the form to register to the Plugathon for openEHR and to also the HDS Plugathon, and there is also the website in which the openEHR Plugathon is explained. Everyone has questions. They are very shy.
Explained everything.
You explain everything, or they are very shy.
Yeah, Igor did ask a really good question there, and Igor, part of the answer is you can help inform that. So thank you for your question.
Hello, Rachel.
Hello, good to see you.
Maybe I have a question. During your presentation, you was telling that there's a lot still in progress and that you need a participation from people who knows from both sides, or maybe even more or less, who help you to bring this partnership working. What is the effort? What do you need then in this? Because I know it is all international, a lot of EIA, a lot of traveling. How does it work? Maybe you can tell something about it. If somebody want to help, what does he need and how much effort does he? Because everybody has a bit, I think.
I think from our side, Igor, there won't necessarily be huge amounts of travel. If people can't travel, this is going to be about finding areas of interest. And then within our community, certainly within openEHR, we will probably, as we have had with the other standards, a working group of members. You know, you're a member twice by accident, aren't you? So you've got two memberships. A group of members that will take it forward, but we are really conscious not to exclude people you know, who can't perhaps travel to meetings. So we will make as much of this work in between major events virtual, which we have done with other standards bodies, because this is a global community.
And how many meetings do you think is once a month or once a week or 1 day a week? Or
no, so the group, I think we're talking more once a month, the main groups that we have working on sort of standards. So it's, you know, an hour or two, maybe once a month or once every 2 months, and we bring everyone together. And then people like Abby that we've got on this call, and I and others within openEHR take those work items forward. Yeah.
Okay, well, probably we talk about in 2 weeks in Amsterdam together about this topic.
Absolutely, that will be a great opportunity.
I guess a part of the answer there, Igor, is also from an IHE perspective is the pace of the actions we are going to decide at the end of the Plugathon. I am the one that I think that the smallest step that is the most significant that we can achieve is the best step that we can take. So I don't know what the step will be, but I think you know, we need to create something that is tangible at the end of the day, that it can be usable and then can be implementable. That's to me the main objective in getting out of the Plugathon with a plan. That if we can achieve that in 1 year or whatever is the time that we give ourselves, I think we have really hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, it's the initial project to form the sort of
exactly
work. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we have to look at EADS. It can help also a lot, I think. But we will look. Okay.
Thank you for your questions.
So thank you, Igor. Thank you again, Rachel and Lapo, to present here. And thank you, Sophia, for putting the website and the link for registration in the chat. Thank you to the audience, and see you in the next webinar, or see you in Vienna.
Hopefully Vienna.